Welcome to After Six. My name is Minda Hartz. I am the founder of the Memo, a career development platform that helps women of color prepare their seat for at the table. And I'm really excited to have our guest tonight, Sherry Sims, who's the founder of Black Career Women's Network, a national I'm all tongue-tied a little bit today, a national women's professional development network for African American women. And I'm so excited to have her because, entrepreneurship is one of those things that sounds very glamorous and at times can be very rewarding, but there's another side to that too. So I'm really excited to have her talk about it and her why. When you do social good, you don't always see the direct benefit monetarily right away, and sometimes you do. And so there's all these different sides to entrepreneurship. So if you've never been to After Six, welcome. If you've been here with us before, then you know we get down and dirty after six and having those conversations. Hopefully you can see us and hear us. If you cannot, please type in the chat function or in the questions box and let us know. Also, at the end, we'll do some Q&A. So if you have questions, type those in. I know some of you listening in. So we have some watching us live and we have some listening in. And then we have other members who will see this recording on Monday. So everybody will get their fair share. But for those who are on the line, thank you for sending your questions ahead of time. So we'll make sure that we get those answered. So without further ado, I'm going to send it over to Sherry. Thanks for being here tonight.
Absolutely. I'm so glad you had me on. Hello, viewers and callers as well. So I'm glad to be here. And entrepreneurship is definitely it's a great rewarding journey, but also has its challenges. So I want to share with you guys specifically how this came about for me. Entrepreneurship was never on the radar. This is, I'm just going to be completely transparent as I talk about my journey with each of you, that I was really, at a place in my career. I had been working in HR, human resources, industry for about 15 years, pretty much total, when I started thinking about doing something different. And so I had transferred or relocated to Ohio, and probably was maybe 3-4 months into my job, and I got to work that morning and sat down in the chair, and I just sat there for like 2 minutes and said to myself, I don't want to do this anymore. I do not want to be in human resources anymore. And the functions that I performed for the last, 15 years was generalist roles, but also corporate recruitment, talent acquisition, whatever they want to call it these days. And so I did that for a very long time. And so I got to a point where I didn't want to do the work anymore. I felt like there was something more for me, or I felt like, you know what, there's other things that I can do. I have other skill sets. I have other talents. And I didn't even know what the heck they were. I just knew in my gut that I was ready for something different. And so I tried to discover what that is, and wasn't having very much luck. Nothing felt right. Nothing felt good. And then, one thing I will share with you guys as I talk about tonight, my journey in entrepreneurship, is that I really felt like the divine was leading me in this direction. And I'll tell you why. I'm going to backpedal just a little bit, and we're going to go back to 2008. I was working in an HR position in the South, and I had discovered a position that they were looking for HR generalists that they could, for this one particular site, they were looking for a generalist that they could develop into an HR manager within 6 months, because the HR manager was leaving and moving out of the country with her husband. And so I felt like I was an ideal candidate. I was an internal candidate, so I knew the dynamics of the organization. And so I applied for it and didn't get it. And I felt like that the interview I received was more of a formality versus really taking me seriously. So when I called the manager to get feedback as to why they weren't considering me, so I could develop myself or what have you, I was told that my manager just didn't want me to leave, didn't want me to go anywhere. And so I really took that personally to say, well, why wouldn't you want me to progress in my own career? Why would you not, sign off and be someone that can say, hey, she's great. Yes, this would be a great career progression for her. Why wouldn't you, as a manager, why wouldn't you support that? So I felt like I was on this lonely island. So I started looking for Black women who looked like me that could help to mentor me and prepare me for that executive C-suite level, and couldn't get anyone to say yes to mentoring me. So I, at that point, got a little discouraged, and I was working late one night at work and was on my LinkedIn page, and I saw that they had these things called groups. And so I said, you know what? I'm going to make a group. I'm going to make a group, and I'm going to make it for Black women. Just that way they can come in and we could talk and we could share dialogue, and I can get some career advice and hope I can share some things about interviewing, kind of showing my expertise too. And so I got to creating this group and was very excited. And I got to the point where they were asking me, that I have to create a name for this group? And I thought, oh my gosh, I don't know what kind of name, what should I name this group? And then I thought, you know what, I want to be something that's clear, that women know it's about professional, it's about careers, it's about professional women. And so I created the name Black Career Women's Network. Was very excited about the LinkedIn group, and nothing happened. So no one was joining the group. So I just said, forget it. And I forgot about the group. Fast forward to 2 years later in 2010, I relocated to Cincinnati. And again, now I'm back up to the story. I had started this new position, was in the job for 3 months, and just decided I didn't want to do this work anymore. And at that point, I continued to do the work because we have to. We have bills to pay. I had a child to feed that was in school, and I continued to work. And one day I got to work. It was a Monday morning, no, actually Tuesday morning, and I was told that one of our employees called in sick, and I was going to have to go work this job fair. Wasn't happy about it. You know, when you get to a point where you've been in HR for a long time, job fairs is no longer fun. And so I reluctantly did it, got to the job fair, was there all day. A lady came up to me from this nonprofit organization and said, we're looking for community partners. Would you be willing to talk to me? And I said, sure, absolutely. And in my mind, I'm thinking, well, part of my 12-month review is I'm required to have a community partner of some sort as one of our initiatives. So I was like, what the heck? I can meet my initiative for my review. So called her up. She came and met with me about a month later, sat down, told me about what she did, and I lit up. I could not believe there was something I had interest in outside of that, because I was looking for something where I could take my experience and use it in a different way. And she talked about what they do, how they help people prepare for, for jobs and all these different things when it came to job readiness. And I got really excited. I said, oh my gosh, I can do this. I can do this because, with me being an employer and hiring people, I can give a lot of insight into what that's like. So I just was aggressive and said, okay, how can I come work for you guys? Like, I'm ready to get the hell out of here. Can I come work for you guys? I was like, I'm sick of this crap. And so she said, well, we're not hiring, but we need volunteers. So I started volunteering my time. Now, and I hope that someone on this call or watching is listening to what I'm saying, because volunteering is powerful and it can open up doors in various ways. And I've heard this from various C-suite women, how they have volunteered their time to organizations, and it has turned out to be a career opportunity for them. So I volunteered my time, and typically when I go to volunteer, which was once a month, this particular time I stayed behind, and I kind of spent some time talking to some of the staff and getting to know them a little bit more. And during that conversation, one of the ladies said, I'm moving to Birmingham. And I was like, oh my gosh, I just moved here from Birmingham. Almost a year. And, you going there? She said, yeah. She said, we talked about Birmingham and all that good stuff. And she said, she's leaving. I said, oh my God, there's a position open. So I sent my cover letter and resume to the president and got the job. And at that point, I was very excited because I actually had did something about it, and I listened to my gut, which was when I say I got so excited to hear about the work that they do, and I wanted to learn more. I had this surge of energy that came through me when I was searching for other opportunities that my skills could be transferable to. It just wasn't there was no excitement there. And accepting the position was I had to do some soul searching, because when it was time for them to make the offer to me, I heard the salary and about hung up the phone in their face simply because I was taking a $30,000 pay cut. What I did not realize at the time is that nonprofits didn't pay very well. I've always been in Fortune 500 companies, corporate America, so I wasn't really familiar with the salary ranges when it comes to pay in that sector. So I had to take a hard look at, oh my gosh, what do I really want? I mean, I'm about to take a huge pay cut for this career opportunity. Is this really worth it? And in my gut, it felt right. I said yes. I looked at my savings account. I looked at my checking account and said, told my daughter, we're going to do this, or I'm going to do this. And so I took that chance. I took the chance and took a huge pay cut to change my career. And still at the time, entrepreneurship was still not anywhere on the radar at the time that I accepted this position. So I accepted this position, and I started the nonprofit, and then I started to learn things about myself that I presented very well, and I didn't do much of that in my HR career when it came to recruiting outside of sharing best practices and kind of doing things within that networking sector, but formal presentations in front of large groups of people, and we're talking like 50 or more, hadn't done that to that point in my career. So I noticed that I had a natural ability to actually for leadership. I had natural ability to get people to persuade them to listen. And so I learned about facilitation. I had a natural ability for in relationship building in a different way from a coaching standpoint and getting people to trust me and to trust what the expertise that I have. So that was something that was important for me to make sure that I was recognizing the skill sets and what I had to bring to the table. So it was important to recognize more so what am I getting out of this position? And I didn't focus on the pay, the low salary, but more as what gifts and talents am I gaining from being in this role? So I have to, excuse me for my laptop's unplugged and my light is dying. Hold on. Okay, sorry guys. I just didn't want the video to be dark for Minda. We want to make sure we got good lighting for her video. Okay, so back to that specific piece. So those were skill sets I discovered about myself. So making this move, and I'm going to say this in between, I hope you guys will ask questions about this. When you decide to take a leap of faith, and when you want to do something different, you want to change careers, or you want to do something different, sometimes you may have to take a pay cut. But if you're looking at it from a standpoint of what's in the soul core of your gut, the payoff is going to come back to you. And I'll be sharing this through part of my story. So I'm doing the work, and I changed my LinkedIn page and updated my information on LinkedIn. All of a sudden, African American women start calling me, asking me for career advice, telling me about the situations of work and how can I help them. And I was on the phone late one night talking to one of my friends, and I shared with her, I said, a lot of Black women are calling me and asking me for career advice, and I don't get that. I'm nobody. I'm not a career coach. So why are they really asking me that? She said, Sure, you are a career coach. And I said, well, yeah, I guess I am a career coach, but I wasn't marketing myself that way. And then she says, you don't realize what you've done, have you? And I said, well, no. She says, you position yourself to be an expert in this industry, or from career coaching standpoint, I don't even realize it. And I was like, I didn't. And at that point, I said, you know what? You're right. What I recognized is that I was enjoying the work. I was enjoying talking to these Black women. I was enjoying helping them to solve their challenges at work. But along the way, they were also helping me. In a way, they were letting me know in their own way, without me really recognizing it at the time, is that each and every one of these Black women, there was something they've been through in the workplace that was similar to experience I had along the way of my career. And then at that point is when I recognized, you know what, I've been having these ebbs and flows of challenges in my career throughout the years, thinking something was wrong with me, when there are other Black women out there in this world just like me who were having the same exact challenges or similar. And so that's when I realized that I was never alone in this journey, that there's Black women who go through the same exact problems or challenges at work just like I have been. And then there was one specific call I received for a woman who experienced something almost, I mean, eerily scary to what I had been through. And I told her that she needed to go ahead and sue. And I was too afraid to do it at the time of my career because it was very early on in my career. I was trying to prove myself in HR. I felt like I was going to be blackballed if I did it. So I was too afraid to do it. But I did tell her, I was transparent and said, you know what? I was too afraid to do it because I didn't want to be blackballed. I was a single parent trying to make it, and I let those things get in the way of what I felt like was right. And so I told her to sue. And then she called me back. I think it was like 60, almost 90 days later. And they settled out of court. and she won. And so I felt so great about that. And then something told me to just go look and check your LinkedIn group. You haven't looked at it since 2008. Hence now we're in 2012. And I looked at it. 250 something women were waiting to get into the group just within the year that I started this career coaching job for the nonprofit. And I was like, I'll be damned. These women are waiting to get in here. And I thought, and that's when the light bulb went off for me and said, you know what? I think I have something here. And I really loved helping and still do to this very second that we're on this, on this after six conversation. I love helping Black women in their professional development. So at that stage is when I decided, I said, you know what? I want to make this into something. So I decided to create an organization, take it offline from the LinkedIn group and create an actual organization and build a structure around professional development for African American women. At the time that I started this organization, I didn't have a foundation or a model of anything to go by. There was nothing out there. So I really had to just create this vision of what I wanted it to look like on my own. Now there's a lot of other things out there, and some of those things use my model as a basis to help their foundation. But for me, it was important to make sure that I touched on the points of the things that impact us most in the workplace. Now you're probably wondering, okay, Sherry, you've given us your your timeline on how BCWN came about, but where did the entrepreneurship piece come in? Now, I created the model back in 2012, but I didn't go completely on my own until actually officially until 2017. So, it took a while. I was one of those 9 to 5 entrepreneurs, is what we call them, where you're working full time and then you have the side hustle. And BCW was my side hustle for quite some time because I needed to work. My daughter was still in high school. She has her needs and I had mine. And I wanted to make sure that I figured out what this model was going to look like and make sure that it had the proof or the ability to be scalable and also to be profitable. So I worked 2 jobs, burning the midnight oil for actually, I'm gonna say really for about 4 years. Burnt myself out for a while, took a hiatus for a whole year, not necessarily from my online presence, but just kind of taking a step back from promoting so strongly so I would not burn myself out and keep going. So, the main thing is that I got to a place, and a lot of you who are doing it right now, if you're working full time and you are also have a side hustle and you eventually want that side hustle to be your full-time gig, guess what? You're going to hit a crossroads. And you're going to have to choose specifically if you want to continue on with your full-time job, or do you want to give everything that you have and go for it from an entrepreneur standpoint. Now, I went into this not wanting to be an entrepreneur. My whole thought process was to work full time still, doing my coaching, because at this time I left the nonprofit and went to a college and started doing a career service advisor, a career consulting work for a local college. So my whole goal was to do that and then do BCWN on the side and kind of have that balance of my purpose work and then my full-time work. And the purpose work kept calling, and the purpose work kept asking me for more and more of my time and more visibility and more and I started to see opportunities to create things that can help the women more outside of what I was doing in my full-time job, where I'm working with all walks of life for the career development with students. Where my love and my passion was working with Black women in their development for various reasons of what we deal with and challenges that we deal with in the workplace. So I got to a place where I was torn. And I was walking a thin line. I'm working 8 hours or 9 hours in my full-time job. I'm coming home and working another 5, 6 hours, or working through wee hours of the night, until 3 or 4 in the morning, and have to be at work at 8. And when you're doing that for such a long time, it can get exhausting. So for those of you who are listening, you will get to a place where you're going to have to choose, depending on what it is. And it's like Minda said, if it's a service driven or purpose driven goal that you have, or you're doing it for the reasons of you felt called to do it, or you felt like it's something within you that you want to do it for purpose, like I said, purpose of service, it's a different pull, it's a different tug on you than if you're like, okay, well, I just want a second stream of income. I'm gonna work my full-time job. I'm gonna have this side hustle and I'm gonna manage them both because I just want the income. That's great if you're doing it for that specific reason, but there's still things within doing both you still have to consider as an entrepreneur. And more than likely, once you start to see if it becomes a love or a passion of yours, more and more you're going to be drawn to doing that work and less to doing the work where you're getting the paycheck every 2 weeks, once a month, or every week. So you have to be very clear and specifically what it is, why you're doing it, what's your why, how you're going to do it, how you're going to maintain both, how you're going to maintain your family. For me, it was a little bit easier to give a lot more hours to what I'm doing because I'm a single parent. My daughter is now a college-bound student, college-bound. So it's just me. And so I can give all my time to focusing into building the business. But if you have a family and school-age children, and you have to learn how to manage all of those things. So again, I got to a place in my business where I had to choose whether it was going to be my full-time job or BCWN and or managing both for how long. And if you do not decide to choose, guess what? The choice will happen for you, whether you're going to be terminated from your job, or you're going to quit, or you're going to get so busy in your own in your personal, I mean, in your business, that it's going to make the decision for you. So you've got to decide specifically which direction are you going in, and then creating a strategy that's going to go along specifically with that. And I think it's important for a lot of people to recognize specifically that if you do not, again, I'm going to say this one more time, and you probably hear me say it again. If you do not make the decision or create an exit strategy, one will be made for you. Specifically, if you are a service or purpose-driven type of business, it's going to happen eventually. And are you going to be prepared? And I'll be transparent and let you know. So I quit my job back in 2015 because I decided I no longer wanted to work full time and be under that obligation of working full time and having the commitment. I wanted to be able to work somewhere and have the flexibility to also do things within my business. Specifically, if I need to travel to speak somewhere, if I wanted to go to a conference and just be present or have a vendor table or what have you, just kind of give BCWN more exposure. So I started to do HR consulting. And the HR consulting allowed me the flexibility to tell people per projects, I have this business, there's going to be times where I may need to travel. And so I need to be able to let you know that up front. So doing these projects would give me the flexibility to do that. And I did it all the way up until 2017. And I got to a place where I was tired of doing the contracts because at the same time, those were starting to also impact the business too. So learning how to manage both is hugely important for people who are listening, who have a full-time job and you have that side hustle that eventually may turn into a full-time position. You absolutely want to make sure that you create an exit strategy of some sort. It's going to be hugely important. So again, for me, the biggest thing I can tell you is that if you go in it with the intention of just, creating some profit for yourself, and you're looking just to have a second stream of income, that's great. But if you start to see that it's turning into passion work, and that you're doing it for different reasons other than the money, that you're truly here to help people for whatever that service level is, that you absolutely need to think about an exit strategy. And then really, are you really fit and tough and ready to be an entrepreneur? So I'm going to break it down into 3 things that you need to think about or consider if you want to do entrepreneurship full time. Okay. 1 is creating an exit strategy. 2, you need to look at, are you disciplined enough to do it? And what I mean by that is that if a lot of you have worked in corporate America and you have certain ways that you operate and you work, what worked in corporate America may or may not work for you as an entrepreneur. There's certain habits that needs to change, and the level of discipline you're going to need when you step into what I call the dark side as an entrepreneur, there's certain specific things you're going to need. And then three is who and what is your support system, because you're going to need it. You're going to need a support system. There's going to be ebbs and flows. Minda and I just briefly talked about that before we jumped on tonight's After Six career conversation. There's ebbs and flows to this thing. And, as me and my daughter would say, it is real out here in these entrepreneurial streets. It's real out here in these entrepreneurial streets. So you need to make sure you have a support system. So I'm going to say those three things again. Okay. You need to make sure you have an exit strategy. You need to make sure you have a good support system. And what was the third one? That's an old age. I already forgot what it was. That's a shame. That's a shame. But you need to make sure that you have these things in place. And the support system, I want to talk about just a little bit, because I know there's women on here. Some of you are probably in a two-income household. Some of you are probably just young women who have an entrepreneur spirit that's waiting to come out, or there may be single mothers like myself who are listening. And I do not want anyone to have any self-doubt and say you cannot do it. Because if you're doing it for the right reasons, then we're not going to say it's always going to be glamorous, but there will be, there will be provision for the vision. And listen to what I'm saying, there will be provision for the vision if it's genuine and if it's true. And so do not allow the fact that you don't have a cushion at home, or you don't have a second income, or it's just you, to stop you from moving forward with your dreams of independence and freedom, and being able to create and leave a legacy behind for yourself, for your family, for your children, and for those of you who have those. Don't be afraid to do that. Don't let things like that stop you. Because again, entrepreneurship, there are going to be ebbs and flows to this, and it gets real out here. It gets real out here in these entrepreneur streets. I'm saying again. But if you are doing it for the right reasons, the rewards will pay off in the end, and you will have the ebbs and flows. So I really hope that this was, and I try to keep it, look, it's 8:28, Minda. I hope I did good with sharing the story part, but it's hugely important to understand. I think people, when you understand the how and why of when it comes about, it just kind of gives people a bigger picture of why you do what you do. So I try to keep it fast and quick and short.
No, I love that. I love that. I knew that you were the right person to have speak to the community, because I think that you have to keep it real. I mean, we can front and stunt on the internet, and you might be in Forbes one day, but you might be sliding down the wall another day. Okay,
Yes.
because nothing is going right. Okay, so it's like you said, it's real in these entrepreneur streets,
Yes.
and also too, I love that there'll be provision for the vision if it's meant to be. And I think that that's important, because yes, there will be struggling and a little bit, but you also have to know that at some point it will happen if it's meant to be. And so a few questions that I want to pose to you in our fireside chat before we launch into some other questions that some of the communities already given. And if you haven't heard an answer to your question yet, make sure, don't be afraid, use the questions box. That's what it's there for. Yes. So one of the things that you talked about, Sherry, was knowing kind of when sometimes you might have to fold them. What if you've been doing this thing for a very long time? How do you know when it's time to keep going, or wave the white flag, or go back to corporate America? When do you start to question or make those type of decisions? Because those are real too, right?
Oh yeah, they're real. And trust me, I've had many of nights where I thought, my God, what am I doing? Do I need to go back to work? Just, what am I doing here? I do think when you have exhausted every possibility to make it work, where you have gotten advice from other people who are doing similar things, or if it's not working and you tried everything that you feel within your power to make it work and it's not effective, then there's two things: you can give it up or you can reboot. And sometimes we have to reboot and go back to work and to fund it more, right? Maybe it needs more time. for people to either catch on, or maybe maybe you don't have the right programs in place that people want to be a part of. So you can either go back to work and reboot, reevaluate, rebrand, and see how that goes. Or if you felt like I'm done, I've given everything, I have nothing left. If I spend one more hour on this, I'm going to be in therapy. So,
That's real.
yeah. And so if that's the case, then yeah, give it up, and then, and then move on to something else. I always, when I get to the place where sometimes when I think I just want to really let this go, I think about Colonel Sanders, and I think about how he was 42 years old. And I'm not trying to say my age. Okay. I'm just saying it.
You just quoting a fact, a
statistic. 42 years old when he started KFC, right? And he had, before that, he had started many, many businesses, and all of them failed. Every last one of them failed. And then KFC was the one that, was the one that made it through. And so, not to say that that's what should happen for other people, but I think sometimes people look at the failure and say, oh, well, this is it. This is my one chance to do it, and I screwed it up, or it didn't work. And they just kind of give up on the dream. So I think when, like you said, Minda, when it's a service-based type of business, and if it comes from the core, if you really are passionate, if like you were called to do the work, then again, the provisions would be made. Doesn't mean it's not going to be a long, tough road. I can tell you that. But it definitely means that you might need to be realistic about that. And I had just came back from a small business administration event, and the panel talked about this: that keep your day job as long as you possibly can. And I really think that sometimes that's true. I think we get so caught up in the love of the work that we do, or the money that's coming from that we don't think about the ebbs and flows, because we have to take time to figure out what's the ebbs and flows of our business. We all have peak seasons in the profitability of what we do, and you need to pay attention to that. And it may take a couple of years to recognize it. Yeah. Because when you're new, you don't really have a profit. You're in the red. So it takes a couple of years to see where you truly have ebbs and flows. I know where my ebbs and flows are. So I already know by August, I need to make sure I'm set for the rest of the year, because I already know where my ebbs and flows are. And so I think that people need to think about those things. We think, oh, we're making money now, and then consistently thinking it's going to be like that the rest of the year. And that's not always true.
No, that's true. I'm glad you said that. And again, for those people listening or watching, or that will hear this later on, it's important that you understand that there's no shame in having to keep your day job until the right time, because you're going to have a heck of a lot more problems if you quit before you have some income on your other one. So, just endure for a little bit. So there's no shame in that.
There's no shame in it. And for those of you who've quit your job to do it full time and it's not working, go back to work and then keep doing it. And then that way it gives you first of all, because if you quit your job and then now you're focusing on the money, oh, I can't pay my bills. Now you're taking away the energy and creativity from your business. And so, and I know a lot of people don't want to do both, but sometimes it's necessary until you can figure out how to do this. And I don't know if a lot of you, we all should, she's very popular. A lot of people know her, Maddie James. Maddie James. Maddie James worked, she said, I think it was 10 years before she went full time, where she completely, I guess, where she was able to, change her income match what she was making from her full-time job. And so, again, I know some people are like, 10 years? I'm not trying to do it for 10 years. However, we're just using it as an example. And so if you're saying you want to give yourself 3 years before you can match your income from your full-time job, then what are you going to do to put in place to make sure that you have the profitability, or that you're putting in place a revenue generating model that's going to help to replace that income from your full-time job? And that's really what you need to do, is spend time creating a revenue model and testing it out, tweaking it as you go along. And I think I know a lot of women I know that take that leap without thinking about it, or not looking at what kind of revenue-based model do I need to follow in order to make that happen.
Yeah, no, that's true. And you also said earlier, Sherry, that, there's some pivoting that takes place. What you think your product might be today, you might be like, oh, I know we find that sometimes, you start out with one thing, you're like, oh, everybody's going to eat this up. And then you were like, okay, maybe that's not exactly what they wanted.
Oh
So
yeah,
you had to push.
I've I have had that. I have done some things at some events and some or put some things in place at like my annual conference. It's like nobody even went to that. I'm thinking, oh, that's gonna be hot, and I'm like, okay, crickets. Nobody went to that portion of it. Okay, so next year we're gonna remove it, and you never know. And so there's so much truth in finding out about who you're making sure you know who your audience is and asking questions about what they want. It's so true that you should definitely gauge them to find out what they need. Because if you don't, you could be spending time and money, resources on the wrong products or services, and that will not serve your audience. And sometimes, and I didn't believe this, but it's so true. You kind of don't control who your audience is.
Yeah.
You can't control that, who's drawn to your products or services and what you do. And I'm using myself as an example. When I started out with BCWN, my age bracket was 45 to 44. And within 12 months, our top age bracket were millennials. So it changed. And I was like, oh, wow. So you just never know, who your target audience is. And if you keep track of that, it may change.
Yep. No, that's good. I'm glad that you said that. And because you have to be flexible. That's part of it.
Yes.
You have to be flexible. I would be remiss if I didn't mention that, when I want to thank you for BCWN, because if it wasn't for platforms like yours, then there would be no platform like mine. And so I have to pay it forward and say thank you, because you opened that door for the Memo to be able to also, enter into the space. And so thank you for that. And when I started, I didn't have a lot of Black women entrepreneurs that were very helpful to me, because
Me neither. I didn't
they
either.
they were in this scarcity mode, and it really was weird to me. But one thing I appreciate about you, Sherry, is that you've never been like that, and so I just want to say thank you for that. And I was going to ask you, what was it like when you attempted to reach out to other women of color on this journey? So, and I asked that question because I know that often, when me and my peers are talking, that they say that other Black women or brown women have not been as helpful. And so all the listeners today, let's change those dynamics. Let's change the ratio and be there for each other. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on that.
Well, it's kind of it's kind of weird. It's been like a 50-50 for me, honestly. I've had a lot who have not, like, I would reach out to, didn't hear anything back, crickets, nothing. And then there are some women who have been very, very supportive of what I do from the very beginning. Like Janelle Hazelwood, that used to be with Black Enterprise, Marcia Haygood, who's the author of Little Black Book of Success, Dee Marsh, Alyssa DeCross, all of them saw what I was doing, and they just kind of like, what you're doing is needed, and thank you for that. And so there's some women who have embraced what I'm doing and have been a part of that, and that I've asked to be a part of the platform, and they automatically said yes. And then there's some women where I'm like, really? And I will say this. Some of the women I wouldn't have expected that from, because it's like, that's what you do. This is kind of like, you're in this space of supporting Black women. It may not be career development, but you're still in that space of supporting Black women. So why would you not say yes?
Right.
So, yeah, I've had a lot of no's. But for all the no's, I've had some really fantastic yeses. And although the yeses have been less than the no's, I don't care about that, because, they were able to see the value in what I'm doing and how it's needed. And I think for anyone who's in a platform like that, where you like, why can't they get it? I mean, I know that what I'm doing is good work, or I know I'm, doing this for the greater good. Maybe sometimes it's not meant for everyone to see it. Because I will say this, I've had two people specifically who said no to me. It took them 4 years, and they finally came around and then asked me how could they support. 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes people need to kind of sit back, and they can't see what you're doing now, but it may take them a while to kind of see what you're doing, if that makes sense, and then come back and say, okay, she's serious about this, she's making some moves, she's making some traction, or he's making some traction, or what have you. And then they come back around and say, how can I support?
Yep,
So
absolutely.
I tell people, don't, if you're getting a bunch of no's, don't fret that. Just keep keep pushing along, because there's going to be a yes, and the right yes is going to come along, and it's going to be exactly what you're needing for the time.
Right. No, I'm glad you said that because early on when I started, I would get all in my feelings about, who said no. And I'm like, wait, but you said you Black Girl Magic, you hashtag this all the time. Like, why wouldn't you want to, again, like you
Mhm.
said, support this? But then I realized, the people that are for you, and you don't
Yes.
have to cry over, those who
Mm-mm.
don't get it, like you said. And so I think, for the people in the back, hear that loud and clear because, you will think that so and so should be supporting you. And you just have to manage your expectations.
No, you really need to. And I think, I think back now between year one and now this is year five, right? And so some people are like, well, Sherry, this is year five. Shouldn't you be further along? I'm like, no, I'm right where I need to be, because I came into this with a realistic expectation of knowing it would take a while to build, knowing it would take a while for the momentum and the word to get out. I didn't go into this thinking I'm going to be an overnight success. I knew there would be work involved. I was ready to roll up my sleeves and do the work. And so you've got to go know what you're going into it with, the what intentions you're going into it for. I mean, when I did my first career conversation back in 2013, Minda, we had two people show up.
Mhm.
Two people showed up, and then two of the staff, well, two of was me and my friend, and the other two was the people who's RSVP. And we all four of us had a conversation, and and then the next one we had six, and then the next one we had 20, and then we had 30, and so we kept going, and then we went from doing them online, I mean, doing them locally to doing them online. So now we've got this huge library of videos, and so it was something that we just continued to push through and do. And trust me when I tell you, I asked C-suite women to come and have conversations with us in these local events, and they were like, no. They said no. I could not get one C-suite woman or even just a mid-level career woman. I was like desperate. I was like, look, just get somebody in the seat. And they all would say no. And then eventually, and I'll use the mentor summit we just did in Columbus and the one we just did in Cincinnati. I got on the phone and I was able to get six in like 2 minutes, you know.
Yeah.
Um, and so, but that's because they've been watching and seeing the work. So sometimes you have to, which is the hot word right now. Sometimes you got to build your receipts.
A and that's real. That's true. You need some credibility, especially at
Yeah,
that level. When they're in the C-suite, they don't want to be playing around with you. They
no,
want to see that
no,
you got a little something there
yeah.
that's worth their
There
time.
are two things that I always talk about to women here locally when we talk about branding with their businesses. I always talk about you need to have credibility and distinction. Okay, it's credibility for what you're doing. My background speaks to that. So I'm not coming off of being a nurse trying to be a career coach, right? So that doesn't make sense. So it's like they get it. And then also distinction, making sure that what you're doing is strong, and it is that when people see it, they clearly understand what your brand is about. And I think sometimes people will put things out there, and then you're like, what is that? And they don't know. And
Right.
and specifically not for our world, but more so for other things. I think because everybody wants these fancy, unique names for things instead of keeping it really simple. And for me, when I decided to do this full time, I mean, not full time, when I decided to start the business, and then I was like, well, what am I going to name it? I was like, I don't know what to name the business. I really did not know what to name it,
Yeah.
Minda. I was thinking, what can I name it? And then that's what I was thinking. I'm like, I don't need to name it. I got a name. And that's when I thought about the name that I had for the LinkedIn group. I said, I'm going to use that name. So that's what I mean, listeners and viewers, about the divine,
Yeah.
because he was already setting me up for this. And I just didn't even know. It took
Yeah.
some years.
But thank God you didn't stop because you wouldn't be here today talking about it and all
Yeah,
the impact,
no, no, but I thank him for sitting me down in a place long enough to where I could hear and listen, because I had been in such fast mode to kind of go up that ladder, you know what I'm saying? Try to break that glass ceiling, that black glass ceiling that we talk about,
Yes.
that I was moving so fast that I think I wouldn't have paid attention to any of that. And so I was at a place with me being ready for something different, that I was able to listen
Yeah.
to what was in my core. And that's important.
No, that is. One last question for me, and then we'll jump to some of the questions that people have asked. If you were to start a new business or restart your business again, what are three things that you would have done differently than you did?
I probably would have stayed working longer.
Okay.
I would have stayed working longer. I would have stayed, I would have stayed in my job a lot longer. And then the next thing I would have done was really brought someone on early, not as far as on the team, but I would have found someone early on who really understood revenue generation, that could have really helped me to wrap my hands around what that's supposed to be.
Yeah.
Um, that's something I would have done off the top, is say, I need someone who can help me to build a strong revenue model early on. And
Yeah.
that's something I didn't do. I kind of tested things out just to kind of see how it would go. My market is a little finicky. With being here in the Midwest, people are not so gung ho when something new comes out. They kind of sit back and say, "Oh, what is that? I don't know what that is. Should I try it?" And so it took a while for it to catch on. And the third thing would have been probably got, probably was started out with a stronger support system than what I had in the beginning, because I am my personality wise, I'm a loner by natural personality. I tend to go things alone a lot. So in business, in entrepreneurship, that was not very good for me.
Yeah. No, that's
Yeah.
good.
So
Real
can you
good.
hear me still? I had a
Yeah, I
little
can hear
thing
you.
popped up in my, okay, great.
Yep.
So for me, I had to realize that being a loner in my personal life is not good for entrepreneurship. And so I needed to make sure that I had to learn to build a stronger, a support system based around entrepreneurship and not necessarily my family, because all of my family lives in one state and I'm kind of the only one that's kind of like, moved away type of thing.
Yeah.
So I'm used to being by myself.
That's good. No, this has been so good. I'm so excited about this. I know that there is a question in the questions box. Can you see it, Sherry, or?
I don't see anything.
Okay, I'll read it to you, and then I'll take some questions that we have from people who are on the phone. Um, my name is Kanika Tolver. I've been in the IT industry for 15 years. For 3 years, I've been career coaching hundreds of Black women in the DC area. As a part of me loves IT, but I feel so full when I'm speaking with coaching my clients. I volunteer a lot, and I do feel like I am called to do this work because my clients have said so and I've seen success. What advice would you have to someone who would like to transition into a 9 to 5 that aligns with your passion? How do you begin to rebrand and convince the corporate company that you can be a career counselor, advisor, or a tech diversity inclusion manager, recruiter, HR professional experience?
Oh wow.
I
So
can use
what she's asking, how can she be a career coach for an IT firm? Is that what she's
I
wanting to do?
or like transition. So I think she's been in entrepreneurship, has her own company, and might want to get into working with companies or being maybe an on-site career coach or something like
Oh,
that. I
okay.
think that's what. Correct me if I'm wrong. Can you type back in the question box if
Okay,
I
that's
got that all
okay. I
wrong?
can answer that. So a lot of organizations, particularly more large Fortune 500 companies like your GEs, your P&Gs, those larger corporations will have an organizational development team, or OG team, OD team, or they may have a professional development area where they have someone on site. So for those type of positions, you typically need to have an instructional design background, if you're doing professional development, because they create the courses that their employees can take online. And they really do not do any, they may do some leadership training and things like that, but it's not as ongoing as you think. So they train their leaders, or they train their supervisors to help with succession plans, or with some kind of career development plan with their direct reports. So there's not really, they really do not hire someone as far as a coach, a career coach on site, when they have a professional development group who pretty much creates these programs that people can take on their own. So I would suggest that if you're looking to segue into that, I would look at going into training and development as a good segue to start. If you're wanting to go back into corporate America and doing it from that perspective, training development, see what their learning and development or professional development teams, I wouldn't say they're rare, but a lot of them do, they just don't have them anymore. So because of course, you know how they do, they cut costs, and everybody's doing two jobs with one salary and the whole whole shebang. So I would have her look from that perspective. Another thing she can do that she probably hasn't thought about is you can be a career coach and stay what you're doing now, but look at developing. What you can do is develop a webinar, webcast, some type of e-course that you can actually have a corporation purchase a license from you to use your particular workshop, you know,
Yeah.
and they can use, and what they can do is take yours, you pay a licensee to use your video, and then that way they can train their employees who they have on staff with that. Or if they have a resource group that they want to use that for. So tap into the resource groups of some of these corporations, see if they're looking to bring someone on to do a training, or see if they can purchase a license from you for any workshop that you have, or video or e-course that you have that they can use. Because what they can do, they'll purchase the license from you, and they will include that video in the library resource they already have. So employees can just kind of do their own professional development with the resource library that they have on site.
Yeah, that's good advice. I have a friend, he has a company similar to that. He produces these e-courses for companies and he
Mm-hmm.
kind of white labels them and gets the license. So
Yeah.
essentially it's the same e-course, but if you're, University of Michigan, it's white labeled for you. If it's
Yeah,
University of California,
exactly.
it's white labeled for you. So
Exactly. So that's
yeah.
something that she can do. Because a lot of companies are not going to hire you to come in and be a career coach. It's not going to happen. A lot of them are not going to do it. And then if they do have a professional development team, it's a small group, and they're really the ones that are kind of putting together. They have more than likely they have an instructional design background, and they're creating these actual courses that their resource groups or their library that they have these resources for their employees to be able to view.
Okay,
So
cool.
I hope that was
Well,
helpful.
well, good luck, whatever direction you decide to go in. A couple of other questions that we have here is, why do you think a lot of women of color are leaving corporate America and starting their own companies?
Oh, good. Okay, let's talk about that one.
Let's get into it because, yes, I'd love to hear
You
your
and I
thoughts.
had talked. We talked about this. We talked
Yeah,
about this. So there's a couple of things that are going on, and I'm just gonna start right from. We're gonna talk about the Starbucks thing. We're gonna talk about Starbucks. Okay. So everybody knows about Starbucks. We know about what happened with the two guys, and now they've like shut down Starbucks so they can have this, bias training, with 16,000 employees or however many it is, right? So there's a lot of other employees who need to be trying to do the same thing. But part of the process is I'm using that as an example to say part of it is the bias. Part of it is because of perceptions and individuals who they're allowing to be in these leadership roles who do not have the proper training. And it goes back again, and I hate to say it, but it does go back to the bias because bias left unchecked can lead in specifically into discrimination, and it's such a fine line when it comes to that. That if people are not recognizing it, and we all have biases, and we're not talking about, this is not just about Black women. This is about, you could be Latino, Asian, you could be a full-figured woman, you can be a full-figured man. I mean, the biases are not just about us, but it still impacts us in a way specifically to where we don't want to put up with it. Part of it is us, and part of it is them. And I know some people are not going to agree with me on that, but it's the truth, because we don't go into the workplace equipped to play the game. We don't go in equipped on how to communicate, and we don't know equipped how to go in and navigate finding people that can help to be allies for us, that can speak for us on the behalf, like our sponsors, right, or these mentors. So it's a little bit of combination of us and a combination of them as well. And what happens is because that if we don't understand how to navigate, we don't understand the dynamics of what we've walked into, if their core values are not lined up with ours, then we tend to carry. It's just like what Erica Badu says about the bag lady, carry all that baggage. We go in and we carry that baggage instead of letting it go. We beat ourselves up for the experience, and then we get to a place where we're tired. We get tired, and then we're like, I'm done. I want my freedom to be able to do what I want and not deal with this psychological bullshit, because that's what some of it is. and then we want to call the shots on our own. And there's nothing wrong with that. But at the same time, there's nothing wrong with someone who is comfortable and wants to remain in a 9 to 5. There's nothing wrong with that. You know, we need people to work. We need stuff to function. And we can't have all entrepreneurs cannot function as well. We can't, right? So we need people in these corporate roles and things to help things function. But I think, part of our jobs, you and mine, Linda, you know what I'm saying, is that teaching these women how to, like you said, your thing is how to making sure they have a seat at the table. Mine is making sure that they are equipped with what they need to succeed to go to the next level. If it's a seat at the table, or if it's I want to become a manager, or if I want to be able to just to be able to progress through my career and not feel stalled.
Right.
So it's all about being equipped. And I think a lot of times we go into these roles and we're not equipped. Or we think, and some of you probably will not agree with me, but we get these degrees and we think our degrees is going to get us through, or we go to work and thinking we're going to do a great job and that's all we need to do. And that's not the case. And we need to understand there's more to it than just coming to work and doing a good job. And the problem is no one's telling us this. No one's teaching us that we have to do more than just a good job. I mean, the whole twice as good it's true, but no one's talking about the other elements that we need to also have in order for us to be able to. We could be successful, but we're not going to be able to reach higher heights if we don't understand the dynamics of what it is we have to do in order to get there.
Yeah, no, that's really good. I'm glad you said that because, like the Vanity Fair cover, or not cover, but the article with, what was it, like 11, or I don't know how many Black women received funding over $1 million. And I
Yeah.
think that's awesome. That's really great.
Mhm.
But the other side of that is some of us get that money but we're still not profitable and we're not successful. And, that's the other side of the coin that nobody's talking about. And I'm not talking about those particular women, but every Black woman, if we're out there starting our companies, I mean, the statistics show that most of us will not be successful. That's just
Yeah.
the
That's so
way it is.
true.
Yeah.
And I think I'm so glad you brought that up, Minda, because I was 6 months into my doing BCWN. One of my goals I had in my 5-year projections that I had someone help me with was that it was like, okay, I need funding so I can do this, and this, right? And it was about 6 months into doing this work, I realized that funding was not going to be realistically, it wasn't going to happen for me. I could tell in the spaces and the circles I was going in Cincinnati. Cincinnati is known or starting to become like more of a hot tech kind of hub, for the incubators and all this type of stuff. And so I was in those circles. I was in those circles with a lot of white people. I'm just going to call it what it is. And I noticed it very quickly. There were some white men who came to me and said, Sherry, what you're doing is great. We see where you're going with this. We do feel like Black women are isolated in the workplace. And they were like willing to sit down and look at my business model and all these types of things. But then it stopped. That's as far as it would go. There was no other conversation about we can help you, or let's position you for to be able to pitch here or pitch there. And when I saw other women around me who did not look like me, who were getting into those spaces, I'm thinking, well, hold the hell up. Is it me, or is it because of the kind of business that I have?
Yeah.
And I think part of it was me because I am African American, and then also too, part of it is because people do not really look at career development as a really scalable, profitable type of business. And so it's hard to get people to invest in this when they don't see it as very profitable. So one of my goals was to change that view of it here within my own local community. And I've been able to do that. And I mean, so now some of those same people in those circles are like, well, damn, Sherry's just doing the darn thing. But not still to the scale at that stage,
Yeah.
still not to the scale that I wanted to. And I think for Black women, they could get so further along in their businesses at an early stage if they're able to get the funding they need within that first second year.
Yeah, definitely. No, that's good. I know we're just about out of time. Sherry, tell everybody where they can find you, how they can get connected.
Absolutely. You can find me at Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. My handle is BCW Network CEO. and that's on Twitter and Instagram. And then on Facebook is Sherry Sims, or you can find me at BCW Network. That's all Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We all over the place. Same handles. But I'm on social media all the time, so you can find me at any time.
Yes.
And anyone
Find her
else.
in those internet streets. Subscribe. Go check out the website. Support. If you're rooting, I'm wearing this pin tonight. It says "Rooting for Everybody Black." And if you really are rooting for everybody, then you'll go support. You'll go sign up. And for those who came tonight listening, will watch us again later on. Thank you so much for your time and for investing in yourself. The next After Six is next month. In the meantime, you can go to myweeklymemo.com and check out the calendar and see what's coming up. So everybody have a great week. Thank you, Sherry. So much fun.
Good night. Talk to you soon, Minda.
Bye-bye.
Bye.